Good afternoon, everybody. It's been an interesting journey over the last 2 days, and it's interesting how talks tend to sort of intertwine with each other. I think this is possibly going to be a continuing theme in some ways, and it's good because for me, the heart is the centre of everything. I think everybody's explored that in some way or another at a deep level. So for me, awakening the heart, embracing wholeness, is a powerful and essential process that centres on spiritual awakening and human regeneration. So the presentation will explore unity, spiritual growth, personal transformation, firmly aligned with theosophical study of philosophy, science and religion. So I'm really trying to embrace the second object here, which is an exploration of religion, philosophy and science. Not looking at differences, but looking at the commonality to give us some sort of guidance and understanding on finding the truth of reality. So the awakening of the heart signifies a transformative journey deeply rooted in traditions that recognise the heart as the centre of divine wisdom and empathy. This journey calls upon us to connect with love, compassion and universal truth, and to embrace the interconnectedness with others. So embracing wholeness is not just a phrase, but a powerful concept, frequently associated with spiritual growth and self-realisation. It involves integrating all aspects of one's being, mind, body, heart and spirit, into a harmonious and complete state. So embracing wholeness encompasses first integrating the self, or integration of the self. So it involves acknowledging and accepting all facets of oneself. So we're looking at ourselves here in every aspect of ourselves, including strengths, weaknesses, emotions and experiences. So this process allows individuals to achieve a sense of inner harmony. So this, in psychological terms, it aligns with Carl Jung's idea of integrating the shadow, the unconscious aspects of our personality. This is an important part of the growth. It's not often until we're willing to actually look at our shadow till we come to understand ourselves more deeply. So the shadow is often hidden. We often hide it. We don't want to look at it. But here we are embracing the idea of looking at it, embracing it. And then there's a connection with universal truths. Many spiritual traditions view embracing wholeness as recognizing one's unity with the universe or divine source. This transcends the limits of the personal ego and fosters a sense of belonging to a greater whole. Now, Jude talked about the holographic universe and how every single thing in the universe is connected with each other. There's nothing in the universe that is not part of that connection. And Madame Blavatsky talks about exactly the same thing in the Secret Doctrine. There is only one. There's no other. So we're all connected together. Problem is, we don't realise that. So how do we come to realise that? So the third is healing and transformation. The journey towards wholeness often includes healing past wounds or transforming limited beliefs individuals move towards a more authentic existence by embracing all parts of life, including pain and life. Pain and joy, I should say. So, self-healing is an important part of the process. If we all look back, just at this life, we've had experiences which have had quite an impact upon us in a psychological way. Those also need to be unpacked and looked at and released in some way, and let go of in a way. And so that's how we release them, by looking at them, understanding them and letting go. We've all got them, I've got my own, and some of them have taken 20 years to release. But you hang on to these things, you go over them, you cast blame, etc., etc. But so it's working out the way of releasing them. And then service and unity is the fourth. So a wholeness isn't only an inward journey, but also an outward expression. It fosters compassion, love, and service to others, emphasizing the interconnectedness in life. And then there's a little quote on there. Can you read it? It might be a bit dark. It's from The Voice of the Silence, which you've heard quite a bit of today already. This is from The Voice of the Silence is divided into 3 little books. The first book is called The Voice of the Silent, and it's about the inner journey, the inner meditative journey. So the voice of the silence is something that we've lost the ability to hear. And through the meditation process, you can open up and hear that voice in you. The second book is yet to a point in your journey where you have to choose one path or the other path. And this is where this comes in. And this is what Heike Blavatsky says. She says, be of clean heart before thou startest on this journey. So a clean heart, an open heart. Before thou takest the first step, learn to discern the real from the false, and the ever-fleeting from the everlasting. But learn above all to separate head learning from soul wisdom, the I from the heart doctrine. And we'll come back to this a few times as I go through and look at some of what some of the traditions and religions have to say about these things. So, interpreting across traditions, so interpretations across traditions. So, first I want to talk a little bit about theosophy, what theosophy teaches about the heart's awakening and expanding the awareness of universal principles, encouraging the evolution of humanity through spiritual practices. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to look a little bit at Sufi mysticism, which I think some of you know that is something close to my heart. So I've learned a great deal from studying the Sufi mystics. So Islam, so the Sufis are a mystical part of Islam, but some of the interpretations of Sufism are not quite the mystical Sufism, but so there's all different views on it these days. But from my perspective, Sufism is the mystical, the magical part of the Islamic tradition. So last year I shared the story of the making of fire, if you remember. It's a story that has a huge message in it, if you come to it. And I'm particularly interested in Rumi at the moment. I'm reading some books on Rumi at the moment, so it's quite opening. And, Sufism is very much a heart and love-centered tradition. For them, God is everything. And then I'm going to look at the psychological perspective. So modern spiritual psychology views this awakening as a process of becoming more emotionally attuned, self-aware, and connected to the world with a sense of purpose and love. So ultimately, awakening the human heart signifies a profound transition from an ego-centered existence to one that is focused on love, wisdom, and serving the greater good. So the theosophical perspective. So the theosophical teachings, or in theosophical teachings, the awakening of the heart represents a transformative process in which individuals develop a deeper understanding of universal truths. The journey allows one to go beyond one's personal ego and limitations, enabling alignment with higher spiritual principles. Such awakening nurtures compassion, wisdom, and profound sense of interconnectedness with all forms of life. So the heart's awakening in theosophy is through expanded awareness, which represents an evolution of consciousness, whereby individuals gain insights into fundamental unity of existence and its universal laws. This aligns with the theosophical perspective that all life is interconnected, and that awakening is crucial to understanding the role in the greater cosmic. So we've really covered this. Jude covered this yesterday, is with the interconnectedness of everything in the universe. And we've forgotten this. So the challenge for us is to reconnect with our understanding of this. And part of our problem is that we see each other as individuals, as different from each other's. We don't recognize the connection between us. And that connection is powerful. Like we're all like peas in a soup. We just see the peas, but we don't see the interconnectedness. We don't realize that we're in the soup together. So this is what the journey is about at this stage of humanity, is to reconnect with each other at a very much deeper spiritual level. I don't know if spiritual is quite the correct term here, but it's at a level that we recognize that connection with each other. You know, as you go through life, you know, it's part of your journey. I certainly experience this. At certain times you meet people and you just absolutely connect with that person straight away. You have this connection. You can sit down and you can spend 24 hours talking because your resonance between each other is so strong. So we have this already with people that we have connected with in past lives, I believe. And this is something that we can do with everybody if we're willing to sit down and connect at a much more of a deeper level rather than just the personality level. Now, in a relationship, communication is so important. It's developing the harmless communication of listening to each other, responding to each other. The second one is integrating knowledge and love. So theosophy emphasizes balancing intellectual understanding and heart-centered compassion. So it encourages us to balance those two. The awakening heart moves beyond theoretical knowledge to embody love in action. So it's reflecting the unity of spiritual wisdom and ethical living, bringing all those together. So when you're working at a space where everything is done in a respectful, harmonious, and ethical way, this balance naturally happens. And part of the purpose of creating the Theosophical Society was to establish this kinship between us all, this recognition that we're all brothers and sisters. And we understand that at a much deeper level, so that then we can create a special space for people to come into and say, wow, what a place this is, and I want to be among you people. So spiritual practice and transformation. So practices like meditation, self-reflection, and service to humanity are central to fostering this awakening. These practices help dissolve the personal ego and reveal divine nature within, which Theosophy teaches is inherent in every human being. You know, Jude talked yesterday or last night about the universe breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. You know, there's lots of meditative practices that just ask you to focus on breathing in and breathing out. That's you know, and what came in my mind is that we're just trying to reconnect with the breath of the universe here. The breathing in and the breathing out. I heard that, you know, when the Buddha sat down under the Bodhi tree and he refused to get up until he was enlightened, so the story goes, all he did is breathe in and breathe out. Connect with the universe. So it's very powerful. So the breathing in and the breathing out, of course, along with that goes being aware of what's going on around you, and especially with the mind. So if a thought comes into your mind, you just be aware of it and, you know, let it go. Or if there's something, well, for me it's always my to-do lists come up when I'm meditating. And, I've got to learn to not have to-do lists, I think. So it's a process. So meditation is an important part. And then self-reflection. Unless we reflect, how are we going to know what's going on within us, our deepest self? How are we going to reflect on what we've done that day, or that week, or that year, and be able to process it, to work with it, to let it go, and to look at the shadow. So think of those things. And humanity's evolution. So on a broader scale, the awakening of individual hearts contributes to the collective evolution of humanity. It encourages building a compassionate, spiritual, attuned society, which Theosophy regards as essential for humanity's progress. Like when I wrote this, was going through the process of developing this presentation, one of the things that really stood out for me is what's happening in the world at the moment. You know, everywhere we look, well, everywhere I look, because we all see the world differently. Everywhere I look, I can see conflict happening. And I say to myself, now, why is there this conflict? And it came to me that the conflict is usually started by people who haven't awakened their heart. They're just in their mind alone, without the balance of the heart and empathy and connection. So opening the heart, if we can start doing it as individuals, that will grow and grow. People will see it. So that heart opening is really, really important in the world at any time. You know, 100 years ago now, we were going through the same thing with the two great wars. It's the same thing, just repeating itself again. It's just the way of Gaia telling us there's something we have to do to bring balance back to the earth. So this process echoes the idea of universal kinship, a core principle in Theosophy that stresses unity, mutual support, and the shared spiritual journey of all beings. Individuals align with these ideals by awakening the heart, facilitating personal growth and contributing to global spiritual advancement. For more insights into Theosophy teachings, visit resources on Theosophy World. It's full of amazing resources. So I'd like to talk about my favourite Theosophist, H.P. Blavatsky. So she's the person that inspired me and has always inspired me to support the Theosophical Society, which she created as the amanuenses of the adepts at the time. And I found Madame Blavatsky before I even knew there was a Theosophical Society. So it's an interesting process.
Well, she found you.
Yeah, true. So HPB, the Theosophical Society's co-founder, I see it's on the gravestone at Adyar in the Gardens of Remembrance. It says the co-founder of the Theosophical Society. Often linked the awakening of the heart to higher spiritual development, the cultivating of compassion and the realization of unity with all life. Below are some of our key perspectives, or her key perspectives. So, heart as the centre of divine wisdom. H.P. Blavatsky believed that the heart was more than an emotional or physical organ. It was a spiritual centre capable of accessing intuition, higher wisdom. She taught that the true spiritual knowledge does not come from the intellect alone, but from the union of the heart and the head. So they have to work together. So, in The Voice of the Silence, she writes, compassion is no attribute, it is the law of laws. Eternal harmony, Elias self, a shoreless universal essence. So here she connects the awakening heart with the universal principle of compassion and harmony. So compassion and kinship. So awakening the heart, in her view, was essential for achieving the theosophical ideal of universal kinship. She saw love and compassion as the means to transcend individual ego and embrace unity with all others. So heart and selfishness. In her teachings, the awakening heart is the gateway to selflessness, I should say. By opening the heart, individuals align themselves with altruistic values, enabling themselves to serve humanity and contributing to the spiritual evolution of all beings. So when I talk about heart, it's a little bit like Bill said when he introduced me, that the real heart is the heart chakra, not so much the physical heart. And often we think of the physical heart, but the physical heart is simply an organ that pumps blood around our body. It's the heart chakra that we need to open and embrace. So integrating with the spiritual path. So the path of the heart versus the mind. So she talks quite a bit about this in the different literature. So while HPB valued the intellect and study, she warns against solely relying on intellectual pursuits. She urges students to balance intellectual understanding with the cultivating the virtues like empathy and selfless love. And in inner transformation, she says, awakening the heart involves a process of inner purification, including overcoming selfish desires, false attachments, and divisive thoughts. This purification made the individual a vessel for divine love and wisdom. So H.P. Blavatsky's vision of the heart awakening aligns with her broader emphasis on human unity and spiritual evolution. By cultivating compassion, love, and wisdom, individuals contribute to collective progress of humanity, aligning themselves with the divine plan. For more detail, exploration of these views, refer to her texts like The Key to Theosophy and The Voice of the Silence. So The Voice of the Silence is a question and answer book, which is gives you very deep insights into her understanding of what theosophy, and by theosophy I mean what the divine wisdom is about. And those works explore the interplay between spiritual awakening, compassion, and the heart's role in revealing ultimate unity of existence. So as we carry on, we'll go through this and we come to some good understandings of how to awaken the heart. Annie Besant, she was the successor to H.P. Blavatsky. She became the president of the TS after H.P. Blavatsky died. And she emphasized the awakening of the heart as essential for spiritual growth and self-realization. Her teachings on compassion, service, and the interconnectedness of life reflect this perspective. Now, if anyone's biography is worth reading, it's Annie Besant's. She, right from an early age, in her 20s, her whole life was dedicated to helping other people. She had such a love that she developed through this work, working for other people. So, Annie Besant, so the heart as the centre of compassion. So Annie Besant saw the heart as a seat of compassion, an essential quality for spiritual progress. She believed that the true awakening involved transcending the personal ego and developing an all-encompassing love for humanity. So the personal ego is that part of us that is full of desire and needs. It's a very selfish process by and large, unless you open the heart and develop compassion and empathy. So looking at what we want and then reflecting on how we could help others is a way to bring that into balance. It's not easy to do. This is the most difficult journey of this part of our life, because our life is often all about what I want, not about how can I help, trying to change the world and help the people around me. You know, someone once told me that, and I don't know if this is true, but it feels good anyway, but that every year, when she was, the president of the Theosophical Society, every year, at the end of the year, she gave away all the money she had to the needy. And then money always came when it was needed. And at the end of that year, she gave it all away again. And money came as it's needed. It's a little bit about trusting the universe, or as the Sufis would say, trust God. So for them, God is the universe. Not a personal being, but it's often portrayed as a personal being. So trust, and what you need will always be there. It's a pretty hard step to take. Can't say I've got there yet, I've still got money in my bank account. So it's a step to look at taking. And maybe try it with half your money. But it won't work because you're not being genuine. So her book, The Age in Wisdom, discusses cultivating virtues like love, empathy, kindness to align with divine. Service to humanity, so she was a real example of this. Awakening the heart is inseparable from selfless service. She viewed service as the practical expression of love and compassion, emphasizing that those who seek enlightenment must dedicate themselves to helping others. You know, it's a bit like when he talked about the Bodhisattva vow. You know, when they take this vow, they are putting their own progress on hold until everybody else has got to the same place they are, and they can all leap through that, you know, whatever it is that you go to at the other side of enlightenment. But doesn't that make sense? Because no one here is separate from anybody else. So isn't personal enlightenment a bit selfish? Unless you take everybody with you. That's how I tend to look at it. So you get to a stage when you understand yourself fully and you've got rid of your shadows and you're present in your, you know, in your true self. That's the point when you can be of real benefit to other people. And you help them along the way. So often, she often referred to universal kinship or brotherhood in her days. That ideal is a cornerstone of theosophical philosophy. This idea relies on the awakening heart to dissolve barriers of race, creed, caste, you know, and all those things we used to have in our objects. So that for her was so important. She always fought for freedom. She even was one of the main people who helped to free India from the British Raj. She went over and advocated in England for this freedom as part of the Indian freedom movement. And she protested too and went to prison for some of the protests that she was involved in. So heart and intuition. So Annie Besant, like H.P. Blavatsky, associated the awakening heart with spiritual intuition. She believed that the heart, rather than the intellect, is the centre through which divine truths can be perceived. This perspective aligns with her broader view that spirituality is experienced and arises from within the heart, in this case. So developing that, if you really want to connect with that inner voice, that inner reality, it's awakening the heart that does that. It comes through the heart. And then you have it coming through the right chakra, which is a chakra full of compassion and love for everybody. You've all fallen in love, haven't you? Anyone here not fallen in love? So you remember what that felt like? So that's, you know, the outpouring from the heart. So that's what you're trying to connect with on a permanent basis. So you can have this love for everybody, not just for one person. And your whole perspective on reality then changes. So balancing the mind and the heart, she says that while Annie Besant valued intellectual study and understanding, she emphasized balancing it with developing heart qualities. In her teaching, she often warned against becoming overly intellectual or dogmatic, stressing the true wisdom arises from the integration of the head and the heart. So it's not negating one or the other, of them working together. So the path of self-purification is, she taught here that awakening the heart involves the process of self-purification, including overcoming selfishness, anger, and other lower emotions. She believed that purifying the heart allows the individual to become vessels of divine love and wisdom. So to do that, you need to be able to reflect on your daily activities, to know, where there's something that you need to work on. So without doing reflection, I think it's very hard to actually do anything about this. So this is such an important thing to do. Many people don't reflect. Yet this is one of the most important parts of really understanding what's going on in your mind and in your heart. And remember, what goes on in your mind doesn't have anything to do with you. These are just things passing through your mind. Certainly your past actions might have caused that. But what's going on in our minds just really reflects where our thoughts have been going lately. It's a habitual thinking. But it's not necessarily anything to do with us ourselves. Like Thich Nhat Hanh, which when he talked about, he's a great advocacy of mindlessness. Mindless meditation.
Mindful.
Or mindfulness, not mindlessness.
Probably the same thing.
Yeah. It is. So part of the process that Annie Besant talks about here is purifying, self-purification. So this happens on many different levels. So influential and practical applications. So Annie Besant encourages spiritual seekers to engage in the practices like meditation, selfless action, and studying universal truths to awaken the heart. She believed that such practices would lead to a life characterized by love, harmony, and service. So can you start to see a pattern building here? So meditation, selfless action, and studying universal truths. You've got to then find out where universal truths are, but yeah. So her teachings on the awakening of the heart continue to inspire those on the spiritual path. So these teachings can be explored further in works such as The Ancient Wisdom, Thought Power, and Thought Power, which elaborate on the importance of love and compassion and border on frameworks of spiritual evolution.
John, do you think that biblical adage, first realize the kingdom of heaven, then all else will be added unto you, is referring to this heart-mind integration?
Yes, in the language of 2,000 years ago, definitely. Yes. Often it's hard to interpret because our thinking and cultures change the way we look at things. So going back to the old scriptures, and I'm going to talk, if we get time, I'll talk a little bit about that later. But the message is the same in theosophy, in all the major religions, in philosophy, and even science is coming to that now, as you've heard from Jude. There's many mystical scientists too, and Jude would be seen to be one of those as well. So it's most interesting. The next I'd like to look at is Sufism. So Sufism, awakening heart is central as it considers the seat of divine love and intuition. So they see the heart as the seat of divine love, intuition, and spiritual realization. The awakening involves transcending the ego and the mundane desire to establish a profound connection with the divine. Here are some core aspects of how Sufism views the awakening of the heart. So, the heart is the seat of divine presence. So in Sufi teachings, the heart is the locus of the divine within the human being. Awakening the heart involves purifying it to become a clear mirror reflecting God's light. So you hear that story sometimes in Zen. You've got to clear the dust off the mirror so that the light can shine through more brightly. So in Zen, you're trying to, so the dust on the mirror is the impurities that we have in our life that we need to slowly pick off, and then the light shines through. But it's not as though the light isn't shining through, but it's so dusty that it can't get through clearly. And the Persian poet Rumi frequently described the heart as the gateway to union with the beloved, God. So in Judaic religions, they all have the same devotion in God. So their God is what in the East they talk about Brahman, or the universe itself, trust in the universe itself. And it's a bit like the holographic universe. It's one whole, one being. It knows what it's doing. It's intelligent. Can you trust in that it's right? Or do we come back to our mind and say, no, that's not right. I'll do it my way. They emphasise that it must be emptied of all worldly distractions to experience divine love. So it's like emptying the mind in a way. And the Sufis do this through, there's Sufi dancing, there's Sufi twirling. That's one of the traditional ways that a Sufi clears the mind. Have you ever seen it? I've seen it in New Zealand. It's amazing concentration they have. They go around in that circle. So they're going around themselves, and they go around the pattern in the circles. And in the book I'm reading, Rumi used to do that with his teacher, just the two of them. They do this for hours, and then sit down and, I don't know, they're just connected like that. So love and longing. So Sufism depicts the heart as the centre of divine love and yearning for God. The Sufi path promotes nurturing on all-consuming love of the divine, which fosters self-transcendence and unity with the divine. The awakening process involves nurturing this love until the heart becomes wholly absorbed in God, often symbolised in the poetry of the burning passion of the moth to the flame. So the moth is always attracted to the flame, and eventually the moth, is absorbed into the flame. Purification of the heart, or awakening the heart, requires removing impurities such as greed, envy, and pride. Through the purification, the heart can become a vessel of divine wisdom. So it's familiar, isn't it? See that same pattern coming through. Al-Ghazali, a prominent Sufi, emphasised that the spiritual practice of dhikr, which is remembrance of God, prayer and contemplation, help cleanse the heart and align it with divine will. So the stages of the heart's awakening. So many Sufis traditions describe stages or levels of the heart's development, moving from the dead heart, so unaware of the divine, to the awakened heart in constant remembrance and communion with God. These stages often involve inner struggle and surrender, culminating in the experience of self-annihilation in God and abiding in divine presence. An awakened heart radiates love and compassion, recognizing the unity of existence. This reflects the Sufi ideal of God's oneness, which the seeker sees no distinction between self and others. Rabbi al-Adwiya, a famous Sufi mystic, emphasized selfless love for God, not for reward or fear of punishment, but as a pure expression of divine unity. So they have several practices, the Sufis. One is called dhikr, which is repeating God's name to focus the heart and mind on the divine. And the second is sama, it's listening to spiritual music or poetry to ignite love and longing in God. You know how music can affect you. Some music is even more powerful. And then mark koda, which is deep meditation to connect with the divine essence within. So the Sufi perspective on awakening the heart is beautifully expressed in poetry, poetic teachings and practices that encourage seekers to go beyond the surface of life and explore the depths of divine union. Notable figures such as Rumi, Ibn Arabi and Al-Ghazali provide profound insights into the transformative journey that highlight love, surrender, and universal connection as its defining features. For further reading, works like Conference of the Birds of Attar by Attar or Rumi's Masnavi delve into these matters much more. So I particularly resonate with Rumi's works. I'm going to talk a bit about Rumi now. So this is a nice little saying from Rumi. Deep in our hearts, the light of heaven is shining. So deep in our hearts, the light of heaven is shining. So don't look out there, look within in our hearts. When you look at the hearts of our fellows here, if we look, we can feel it and help draw it out. So Rumi, a Sufi poet, mystic and philosopher, often explored the themes of awakening the heart in his poetry and teachings. For Rumi, the heart served as the seat of emotions and the spiritual centre where divine love and wisdom reside. Awakening the heart is a transformative journey that brings one closer to God and the ultimate fulfillment of truth. So, love as a path of awakening. So Rumi perceived divine love as the most powerful catalyst of awakening the heart. In his famous lines, and I quote, "With life as short as a half-taken breath, don't plant anything but love." End of the quote. He highlights the importance of love in transforming the heart into a space for divine connection. This love is not limited to personal affection, but as a universal and selfless, directed towards God and all creation. And the same theme is coming through. So Rumi described the heart's awakening as a process of purification, shedding personal ego, desires and attachments, allows the heart to become a polished mirror that reflects divine light. In one of his metaphors, Rumi advises, and I quote, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes around in another form." This illustrates the importance of surrender to the divine will, and trusting all in the greater flow of the energy of life. So trust. So in a transformation, Rumi frequently uses metaphors of fire, light, melting to describe the heart's awakening. In his works, the fire of divine love softens the heart's hardness, transforming it into vessels of grace and truth. He writes, and I quote again, "Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you." So let life live through you. And do not worry that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side you are used to is better than the one to come. So, now we often resist change. So think of that in the context of our resisting to change. In longing for union. So longing for God, symbolised as the beloved, is central to Rumi's poetic expression. This yearning awakens the heart and propels the seeker on a journey of self-discovery in divine union. What you seek is seeking you, Rumi says. So it's quoting Rumi. What you seek is seeking you. And Jeffrey Hodgson used to say that too about when you meditate, he says it's important that you don't ever skip a day. Because he said, as you're meditating, there's a light from you reaching up to God or to the divine. But there's a light from the divine reaching down to you. And it's when those two connect that there's an awakening. So if you stop meditating, then the lights come back and you've got to start over again. So meditation works best practiced on a regular basis. So Rumi famously declares, so what you seek is seeking you, Rumi famously declares, emphasising the magnetic pull between the awakened heart and the divine. So I wonder if Jeffrey Hodgson read that. So the unity of all existence. So Rumi awakened heart perceives the interconnectedness of all beings. In this state, the barriers of self dissolve, and the seeker sees God in every aspect of creation, everywhere. He writes, and I quote again, "You are born with wings. Why prefer you to crawl through life?" Encourage readers to awaken their inner potential and embrace the divine essence. So he recommends, for practice he recommends silence and contemplation. He says silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. Rumi emphasizes quietening the mind and opening the heart to divine inspiration. And then he recommends service and compassion. So the heart is awakened to its higher purpose through love and service to others. So there's that same aspect again. Don't worry about yourself. Try and help others all the time. So in conclusion, Rumi's teachings reflect a deep spiritual philosophy rooted in love, surrender, and the pursuit of the unity of divine. The poetry continues to inspire individuals to look inward, emphasize their divine nature, and awaken their hearts to the eternal presence of love and truth. Works like his Masnavi or the Essential Rumi are excellent for exploring the topic further. And I'll look briefly at Christianity. So Christianity is something that's prevalent around the world, especially in New Zealand. Christianity is still quite a strong movement. So in Christianity, awakening the heart refers to spiritual transformation in which the inner self becomes more aligned with God's love, truth, and purpose. This awakening involves repentance, renewal, and a deepening of faith, leading to a life filled with love, compassion, and service for others. It's often described as a movement of grace that opens individuals to a deeper experience of love. And you can see a quite nice poem of Thomas Merton there, one of the Christian mystics. He says, "A life is either all spiritual or not spiritual at all. No person can serve two masters. Your life is shaped by the end you live for. You are made in the image of what you desire. You come across that a lot these days. I was reading something the other day and it said, the world that you see is the world that you think exists out there. And we all see a different world because of what we hold in our minds. So letting that go is part of the process. So there's a couple of biblical quotes. Ezekiel 36:26, it says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. This passage symbolizes the transformative power of God's grace to renew a hardened heart. In Psalms 51, verse 10, it says, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Awakening the heart involves seeking God's cleansing renewal. So it's not too dissimilar to what the Sufis are trying to do, but no, the Bible talks about it as well. So blessed are the pure of heart, for they will see God. I think we all know that's from Matthew. A pure, awakened heart is essential for spiritual vision and closeness to God. So themes in Christian thought are sort of transformation through grace. So grace is a very important thing in the Christian tradition, where you allow the grace of God to fill you. So, it's like in Rumi, their love is for God. Everything is centered around God, and it's the same in Christian, but it's not so plainly said as in the Sufi tradition. So awakening the heart is understood as a work of God's grace, where the Holy Spirit opens the heart to repentance, faith and love. It's not achieved through human effort alone, but through divine intervention. St. Augustus of Hippo wrote extensively about the conversion of the heart, emphasizing the true awakening comes from surrender to God's will. And I would say that, from a theosophical perspective, real awakening comes from trusting in the universe. Trusting, so love and compassion. The heart awakened to God reflects divine love and compassion and service. As Jesus teaches in Matthew 22:37-39, the greatest commandments are to love God with all thy heart and love your neighbour as yourself. It's all there. So love and respect your nature. So there's a lot in Christianity about developing love. For example, Christian mystics like St. John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila describe the awakening of the heart as an intimate journey towards union with God involving prayer, contemplation, and divine illumination. And then there's the Tibetan Buddhists who Winnie talked about. So Tibetan Buddhism awakens the heart is closely linked with cultivating compassion, or karuna. So loving kindness, which is sort of metta meditation, and direct understanding of the interdependence of all beings. This transformation involves profound spiritual practice, guided by principles that emphasize achieving enlightenment for oneself and the benefit of all sentient beings. So I'll share with you some of these things here. So awakening the heart, mind. So bodhicitta, often translated to awakening mind or heart-mind, is central to Tibetan Buddhism. It refers the aspirant to achieve enlightenment out of compassion for all beings. In these relative bodhicitta, which developing qualities like loving kindness, compassion, and altruism. And absolute bodhicitta, realizing the ultimate nature of reality, characterized by wisdom and emptiness. So as the Dalai Lama explains, compassion and wisdom together constitute awakening the heart and are essential for spiritual progress. So I'm coming to the end of my time, so I'll just quickly talk about a couple of the practices which are helpful, which we can use in our life. And so Tibetan Buddhists often offer structured practices that cultivate compassion and opening the heart. And one of them is called tonlin, or giving and taking. So in this practice, this is a meditation practice which practitioners visualize taking in suffering of others on the in-breath and sending out love and healing on the out-breath. So you visualize someone that's really struggling, and then or under pain or hurt of some kind. So when you take the in-breath, you're taking in their pain and their hurt. And on the out-breath, you're sending them love and healing. So this is a way to help others. So you can do this as part of your meditation practice. And another one is, which Wendy talked about, was loving kindness meditation, which developing unconditional love for oneself and others, gradually extending it to all sentient beings. So just start with a small group. In fact, the practice has different elements to it. So first of all, you start practicing with people you know and you get along with. So you send out unconditional love to those people. And then you try to do the same with people you don't get on so well with. And then you, after a while, it becomes easier to do. And then you do it with people you don't get along with at all. This is a bit harder because this is a way that you have to open your heart here and let those feelings go, and you send out that love to those people. So I'll leave that here with you. I hope that it gave you some insights into awakening the heart from different perspectives. I had more, but as always I've got too much to talk about. So I'll leave that with you. So thank you for everything.